Hello, friends. Hello, brothers. This is Justin Jones, founder and co-host of the Masonic Improvement Movement. I am joined with my co-host, Right Worshipful Dennis Yates, and we have a very special guest this evening. We have the Jarl of York Rite himself, Companion Jeff Bennett. How are you, Jeff?
I'm great. Excellent. Actually, I'm excellent.
Excellent.
Are
you most excellent?
Yes, just excellent. Excellent. Just okay. Excellent right now. Not right or very or most. Okay. Just excellent.
Jeff,
glad you came on the show because we very rarely talk York Rite Masonry, and it's really to the detriment of our fraternity because we really should pay more homage to the York Rite fraternity, especially in Texas, being that it's such a big part of our Blue Lodge degree work. So I'm glad you're on, and I'm excited for this program, and I'm glad for the viewers to get to learn a little bit about you as well.
Absolutely. Before we get rolling with the actual interview, just some quick housekeeping things that I would like to address. First of all, I was looking at our numbers, and 64% of our viewers are not subscribed to our YouTube channel. And as it is right now, it's a very high percentage. And as it is right now, we are sitting at 10,920-ish subscribers. And it's no big deal just to reach over there and click that subscribe button. So if you have been listening for a while, if you're enjoying the content, if you want to stay plugged in and continue to be updated when new content comes out, please be sure just to take a quick second, click down in the bottom right corner, click subscribe. That way you can follow everything that's going on. Also, we have a new member of the Masonic Improvement Movement. His name is I assume he's a brother. His name is Grady Johnson. Grady, thank you so much for your support for our channel. It really helps us to grow and to continue to improve the content that we deliver. So thank you so much for that. If you are not a member yet, there is a join button right by the subscribe button. Consider joining and becoming a member. Every contribution you can make helps us to grow, helps to spread the message and improve the fraternity, improve the channel. That said, I don't have any more housekeeping, so let's just get right into it.
Yes, let's do.
Jeff, I gotta say, we have been talking about doing this for quite a while, our conversation, and like you said, we talk about Blue Lodge all the time. We've talked about Scottish Rite quite a bit, but we haven't really focused on what are traditionally considered like the York Rite bodies, aside from Blue Lodge. That is like the chapter and the council and the commandery. And so this opportunity is really important to me because I'm very heavily involved in the chapter and council at my home lodge. And there's a huge amount of value to be gained by going through the chapter and council and commandery degrees. So I'm really glad we can set aside some time and just really hone in on this.
I'm excited too. I focused about the last 4 years. We'll get into that, but the last 4 years after being a member for over 2 decades. So very, very much a huge part of my life for a very long, long time.
Jeff, what got you into the fraternity?
Well, there's always that family connection. And for me, that would be my maternal grandfather. His last name is Brunk, which you may recognize that in the state of Texas.
Sounds familiar.
I have a first cousin that's currently the most illustrious Grand Master of the Grand Council of Royal and Select Masters of Texas, which is one of the 3 major statewide organizations that governs the York Rite in Texas, the Purple Jacket guys. And then my uncle, he serves us. His name is Barry Brunk. He serves us, senior actually.
I've met him a few times.
He serves us as one of our committee on work members. He is a Right Excellent, Right Illustrious member of that group. which helps to maintain the ritualistic standards of the chapter and council degrees, the opening ceremonies, and just overall the just like the Committee on Work would do in the Grand Lodge. But he's a member of a team of 6, and along with I think 27 district instructors now. It's kind of all that, and he's been involved with that for several years. So
Nice.
and so that's where it comes from. My papa always had on his double eagle Scottish Rite ring. He was a big Shriner. There's some guys down in Henderson where I grew up, and actually I'm involved in a Blue Lodge in a chapter down there. And one of the main people of that, he and I known each other for years because we would be at the airport, the little small airport in Henderson, on Sunday afternoons while the Russ County Shrine Club Mini Patrol would work on their formations before parade season. And so I was out there probably
Very important.
7-8 years of age and sitting on a tailgate drinking a Dr. Pepper, probably, and so that's kind of where it all started. My papa was always involved with things. He died in 1990. We'll go into that a little bit more. Was past master of his lodge in 1955. Joined in 1950 after coming back from World War II, and so it was very much a part of his life. He owned his own small business and went out and checked charts in the East Texas oil field, and would regularly, especially on the weekends, would take in, like a lot of times, law enforcement or other jobs that professions that people have. He took people along with him and taught them their proficiencies while riding in a Ford pickup truck.
Very cool.
The
Nice.
back roads of East Texas.
Yes.
A certificate holder. So that's that heritage for me. The other thing that sparked my interest in Freemasonry was at 20 years of age, I was at Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas, and
Very good school.
Spring rush came around, and in defiance of my dad, who was not a Mason, was not in a college fraternity, I went through rush with the support of my mom. She said he'll understand at some point, and and so I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Order, and was also an officer, and was part of the philanthropy fundraising chairman. So I've known how to be I guess for 30 years of my life, I've been involved as a fraternity member and an officer, committee chairman, those kind of things from the very beginning. So whenever I got out of college and we settled down here in Arlington, it's where my wife originally grew up, I actually interacted with some KAs one night, and I was about 28 years of age. And so this is probably 97, 98, somewhere in there. And I mentioned something about my papaw being a past master in Freemasonry and some of these things that I knew, inherited several of his items because my mom just knew I was going to be a Mason someday, and like her dad. And so they said, well, they didn't ask me to join. They said, why haven't you done it yet? And what's holding you back and everything. And they gave me a great way to help other people. And that's whenever you're over here and several hours away or a certain distance away, or even, in the Metroplex, Justin knows this, from going from one side to the other, and you get approached by that guy and he's like, oh, well, I live over here in Plano or something. And you're like, yeah, you'll never really be active in Arlington. Let's find you a Plano Lodge or Allen Lodge or
Yes,
right where you live. So it's right there and you're active.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I came back to Arlington where I've lived since 1997, and walked in the door. They gave me, this is what you need to do. You're going to get a petition, and walked in the door, and Bob Collier, I don't know if you knew him or not. He was our grand treasurer of the Grand Commandery at the time, very, very active in Freemasonry. And he just kind of took me underneath his wing, signed my petition, helped me get a second line signer. And then my Uncle Barry, Russell Clay Brown, and a guy named John Waldy, who had been to D. Millay and a member. He also was a member of Arlington Lodge, along with John Hughes, all signed my petition. So
very nice.
Right there from the beginning, I had some great mentors right off the bat.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we always talk about mentorship, but we don't talk about how that relates back to expectations. And that mentorship came with a price, but it was a healthy peer pressure.
That's right. That's one of the most important things about mentorship.
And so, Bob kept in touch with me and did all the things a mentor is supposed to do, and everybody else that signed my petition too, and kept up with me. And then my wife's uncle on her side of the family is also a Mason. So pretty much all throughout that took me about 6 months to become a Master Mason. Actually, this is my 23rd year as of August of becoming an EA. So if you would talk to me 23 years ago, I'd be a fellow craft moving towards my master's degree in November.
Nice.
Of 1999.
Very nice.
And so that's when I joined. 2006, I served as master. But before that, Justin, I served as commander in 2004 and high priest and thrice illustrious master in the years. I think I overlapped in 2006 or so with being thrice illustrious master and worshipful master, and I was Cub master of the South. And everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, you're so busy!" And I said, "Well, it's great because everybody's on my schedule, so I have a calendar for everything. So it was really easier for me to do that." So Arlington
that
Lodge,
helped transition too.
Yeah, and I walked into Arlington Lodge, and at that point in time, I bet you we had somewhere between, sometimes there were over 100 people if it was a special occasion with a district deputy or scholarships or something like that, eating the pre-meeting meal. And so we've got a pretty nice sized lodge room, and it was pretty full. So, but it was always a great experience. And then I never was really told that I can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Here I am, like in my 20s, my mid to late 20s, early 30s, when I walked in the door, and it was so encouraging, and it was so not saying that we all got along and everybody held hands and we sang kumbaya, but I mean it was a very positive experience, and there was enough people there that even if there were some people that maybe had some resistance, I met with some resistance, there was a whole other group of people that were mentoring me and making sure. I mean, James Kirkpatrick actually taught me most of my proficiency work, along with the teaching committee that we have there. So
James,
there was always
James Kirkpatrick.
Huh?
You said James
Dale Kirkpatrick. Yeah. I'll go ahead and So he and I've done.
He'll do anything for a taco.
Yeah. Well, he didn't eat as many tacos up until about 2008, and there's a reason for that. But yeah. No, it's always been a real positive place, and there's a lot of I'll just say very active, very high profile Masons, going back to Jim Ward, Billy Melton, and a lot of others that were there whenever I came in the door, and just every one of them took me underneath their wing and said, "Hey, this is the way we do things around here." And it was a very positive thing. But at the same time, if I wanted to say, "Hey, let's keep the old traditions, but let's tweak it and do this." So it was very good. So that's how I got here. KA, going back to that, was written. The ritual was written by two Master Masons, and knowing the ritual like I do, they were also Royal Arch chapter companions, as well as Knights Templars. Also, I don't know if we have documented proof on that, but we do know. You can see that manifest in that degree work. So without giving away any of the secrets there. So.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've already touched in on what we normally ask other people, and that is, how did the reality, set in? You pretty much touched on that, but let's go back just a second, if we will. So you had those reasons for joining Freemasonry. What about going into the chapter and council? What drove you to do that? Was it somebody telling you, or was it your actual desire to learn this stuff?
It was my most ardent desire. Yes, it was actually. But That question's in there though. How did it compare with your expectations? I was raised a Master Mason, November 1999, finished the all program, finished my proficiency, and was exalted, greeted, and I'm trying to think of what a Knights Templar, knighted, I guess would be the best way to say it.
Yes. Invested
in the 2000, the first York Rite Festival in Fort Worth in February of 2000. And so there was an opportunity and conversations about the York Rite. Going back to my college fraternity, it was based on Knights Templarism and a lot of the same symbolism. The Blue Lodge and Knights Templar was there. And so I knew that there was a Masonic Knights Templar. We had the internet back then. Mm-hmm. Dennis, back in the day, actually probably James Kirkpatrick is one of the
that was 56K era right there. That was
it was some stuff. Commodore something or some some CRS 80s or something. No, but seriously, between James Kirkpatrick, he was our webmaster back then of Arlington Lodge. So as I'm trying to find out stuff and get information and read things there, and then there's a guy named Dan Pucci, which I'm a buddy with now. He's a part of the Grand Encampments. He's the one that has YorkRite.org. And he's been on there since the early 90s, maybe in the 80s. I have to go back and look. But anyway, I just started researching all that and looking at and just hours and hours and hours researching and looking at websites and going, okay, I don't know what a Knight Mason is. So I go in and I'd read that. I don't know what a AMD, I don't know what a Masonic degree. So I was getting fed all that. And then it's also available for me to pursue those paths in the York Rite, in the building that I'm in. Yeah. The schedule is set up, the calendar is all set up. For me, right. I have to stop and think, oh, wait a minute, you're a member of this Blue Lodge and it's over here at this building and they're kind of doing this thing. And then you have your chapter and council over here and you have your commandery. Maybe, I know I don't have that. Or at least my original groups, I don't have that. Everything's from one end of the hall to the other. We have two different lodge rooms.
Well, I don't think you can have a mentor like James Kirkpatrick and be in Arlington Lodge, which is like the chapter and council there are huge driving forces of York Rite in Texas. And so how could you be associated with that and not go York Rite?
Let's go back. I might be James's mentor because I actually sat in our chapter council and our commandery on the same night when we used to meet all three. Mm-hmm. And his name came up for a vote and I actually voted for that. Then the next night, so we meet on the second Monday and the second Tuesday, and I'll tell this story because I remind him all the time, and it's kind of one of our set things that we talk about, especially in front of other people as we kind of do our whole comedy routine, the two of us. But I always tell him, I allowed you into my chapter of my council and my commandery. And I said, the thing that scared me the most, James, is that I had to stop and I had to pause before I voted in the affirmative. And he looks at me and I go, yeah, I had to think about for the next, maybe, I don't know how many decades of my life, multiple decades of my life, I was going to be standing within arm's length of you and a sword. And that's a big, but I was like, he had done the Blue Lodge and he'd actually been very active in the Scottish Rite. He joined that first. And then decided it was time to join the York Rite, which I was very happy about. And we've done a lot of things together. I was his senior deacon in the Blue Lodge when I was going through the chairs and all those type of things. So lot of things, lot of great guys, companions, brethren at Arlington Lodge. And then our Blue Lodge is also very active in Fort Worth Scottish Rite also. So we kind of have it all settled, second Monday, second Tuesday, third Monday, third Thursday are kind of the, with the degree work thrown in there as needed. We're always, I think since about 1999, I think we've averaged probably 10 to 15 to 20 Master Masons raised a year and all that time. So if you do that, you got to think about that being a funnel. And so we probably done something like maybe 15 to 20 entered apprentice, and then 10 plus. Anyway, so
We'll see. Wow.
so that makes you sharp on the degree work along.
Well, yeah,
That's
understandably.
that's pretty similar to how it was for me up in McKinney when I joined there. They've been a Vanguard Lodge for years and years, and they have one of the strongest, commanderies, chapter council and commanderies up in the northwest Texas area, up in Collin County. And it was kind of the same thing. And then of course my mother's maiden name was York, and so I definitely felt that draw to just be a part of it. It probably doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. It doesn't, but it just made me kind of want to do it a little bit more. And so but I was fortunate to be in a lodge that had those opportunities as well. And, to be honest, I haven't moved my membership down here yet because I just haven't found that same, same zeal for the institution that I had there. And it's real hard for me to tie into something that doesn't excite me. I enjoy Freemasonry and try to make it enjoyable, but there has to be something going on for me to learn from before I really get excited about it.
Mm.
So going back to the reality of Freemasonry, whenever I went through college stuff, had already, run basically a fraternal group, right? I've been, secretary of my chapter. And so for me, I came in and the Blue Lodge just runs a little bit different. You own a building, and we own a building too, as a fraternity chapter, but there was just some, and there was a long line too. I mean, back then you had to start as like a junior steward. Well, at that point, I worked out at Texas Motor Speedway, which is about 33 miles from where I lived at the time, driving through downtown Fort Worth. And there's just no way I can make the commitment. I have taken the past master's degree, and I have listened intently to that charge at the end of that degree. So, I take seriously my commitments and kind of try to keep my word as best I can. And so with that, I just knew that wasn't going to be a model that was going to make me successful. So the York Rite gave me that. Plus, at that point in time, 23, 25 years ago, the only way you could learn to confer degrees would be to sit with someone that knew the work, right? And so you had to have that commitment of time. But the York Rite has plain English rituals, and you can learn your part, and you can read the ritual back, and you can get more. I don't know. That's always been my companion while I've been studying. So
yeah. Yes.
Do you want? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's always been it's a two-edged sword, having the plain text, because it makes it very convenient to learn it. However, it also makes it probably too convenient to just use it as an aid.
As a crutch.
That's one of our next questions.
Okay.
But going back to that strong support group, but with those standards, hey, you can use the book about 3 times, but you need to learn how to memorize this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You've only got 3 lines, dude. Come on.
Right.
It's and there's only 4 colors. There's only a few colors there, and so but we were learning it all, and so that makes us very. When we come to Arlington, hopefully, our chapter and our council and our commandery, if you ever visit us, is very, very, very laid back. And one time or two, we Monday and Wednesday nights, our Blue Lodge has a teaching committee. And while our candidates are going through their entered apprentice, fellowcraft, and master masons proficiencies, they come in, and from 7 to 9, they overlap on Monday nights with our York Rite bodies meeting. And I remember once more than once there was this EA of this fellow craft that's in our lodge, and he's like seeing all of us at different degrees, and kind of trying to put all the dots together. And he says, I don't know what you guys do in the York Rite, the chapter, the council, the commandery, but you guys walk out of that meeting and y'all are all laughing and having fun, and you have so much energy and you have a smile on your face. And I said, well, there's a concept of being, fellow Sir Knights and being kind of having this extra stuff going on. But I said at the same time, there's so many degrees. We have to be inspected every year. We're constantly around each other, studying and practicing and going through the ritual. I said, if we didn't love each other that much and we didn't like each other, we'd probably hurt each other. So we've chosen to.
You already got swords in your hand, so it could only go down.
Yeah, and we have drawn swords most of the time. Yeah, and things that could hurt you a lot. Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to make a comment about what you said about the EAs and the fellow crafts, seeing the York Rite brothers coming out, companions technically, them coming out and making a favorable impression. I think that's great. I also want to say that something that I have been trying, granted, York Rite's not for everybody. I understand that, but it's such a natural extension of the degrees that you already receive. It's very logical to continue with that. And so where I'm going with this is I try to make it seem as though that's just the progression. That's where you go. It doesn't stop just at Master Mason at Hillsborough Lodge. Once you turn your master's work, it's assumed that you're just going to move on and go through chapter and council. We don't have a commandery right now, but at least do chapter and council and commandery somewhere if that's interesting to you. Just because I think it's so valuable, and it should just be, at least in my mind, it shouldn't be. I see the things you guys are doing. It should be more like, I'm really looking forward to participating in that because it looks like a lot of fun.
And so I think to add to that, I do visit Blue Lodges. I've been accused here lately of, that I've forgotten how to get there, look those up on the internet. But I do attend Blue Lodge, and I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been able to travel with my job, especially within Texas, and been at different size lodges, different rural, suburban, urban, and sometimes you're in a pro York Rite friendly situation. Sometimes you're not, and so I always want to start that conversation, because we are able to recruit once you are a Master Mason. Yeah. To recruit you into that. And
that is the benefit of York Rite, is we can pick and choose.
And so many times I've walked up to somebody probably as close as possible to my age, at one of these meetings, and made sure that I kind of had a one-on-one conversation with them. And I said, hey, so are you a member of the chapter council commandery? And they'll kind of look at me and I go, the York Rite. And I think that's somewhere in these other questions that we have, but that's part of the problem, just kind of understanding how it all fits together, or how you make it look right on the Rubik's Cube. But so I've asked them that, and they'll kind of lean back, kind of step back away from me, usually because they're kind of trying to gather their thoughts, or I've said something that kind of is, they want to go into defensive posture. And so many times they'll kind of stuff their hands down in their pants and kind of, get all kind of uncomfortable. Like, well, I'm trying to learn my York Rite right now. I mean, I'm trying to learn my Blue Lodge better right now. And I'm kind of like, well, those of us that are in, especially the chapter, we understand how that so fits so nicely. Those 4 degrees. One of the things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned tonight on this recording is that in the chapter there's 4 degrees, and until about the last third, you're called brother the whole way. You're a Master Mason seeking a certain journey, a certain level of Masonic improvement To use all the right phrases.
I
Even outside salesman. So
see what you did there.
yeah, yeah. So you're always looking to improve yourself and not just get excited, whatever they're wanting to do in Freemasonry. If they're, as long as they're seeking out something, and we'll go into that a little bit more about my desire and just what I've really in the last 5 years or so, what I've started enjoying on top of being an active Mason, being at degree work, being at different events, but really the true pursuit and seeking of symbolism in a very educational kind of interpretive way. We'll talk more about that.
Well, you never hear, like when when someone's going through the first 3 degrees, they never receive their fellowcraft degree, for example, and the mentor tries to sit down with them and he says, I'm really just trying to take some time to soak in this fellowcraft before I move on to something else. No, you know that's your responsibility. You're supposed to learn your work and move on. But when they get their master's and turn that in, I really want to sit here and just soak in the master's before I move on to something else. Well, I mean, if you're going to work for like a certificate, or if you got some books you want to study or something, I understand that, but that's the exception, not the rule. And the rural arch in particular, it ties in so much. I mean, you're leaving your degrees unfinished.
Well, you haven't finished your fellowcraft degree unless you're a Mark Master Mason.
Yeah.
And actually, something that I think we, in our preamble discussions to this recording tonight, there was a time, I've been told by English companions, that they actually conferred the Mark Master in between the fellowcraft and the Mark Master's degree in the last 100 years in England. There were men in their 70s and 80s that I was on a Zoom meeting that I was privileged to be a part of, and they were talking about the Mark Master's degree that night, and they said, "Hey, well, remember back in the day."
So they got it between their fellowcraft and their masters.
Yeah, because the United Grand Lodge of England's the Supreme Chapter, Royal Arch Chapter, and the Mark Masters Lodge are so integrated in Freemasons Hall in London.
Interesting.
So, and yeah, I mean, there are changes every now and then in Masonry.
Oh yeah,
it's shocking. Freemasonry, I know that's shocking, but every now and then. So,
yeah, that's very interesting. I never heard that. I heard that the Royal Arch was historically.
Don't have that documented anywhere, but that was, information that in an online electronic conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not documented, but if you're talking to people that have actually gone through it, I mean, I see where you're coming from, but like, that's all the proof you need right there is if you actually have associated with people that have done it. Welcome back, Dennis. We were just wrapping up.
Did you hear that?
Huh?
Did you hear that? Somebody calling me?
Oh,
okay. You went like that all of a sudden, and it was somebody calling me. It was weird, and then it knocked me off for some reason. I'm having to tether because we have a cut fiber in the area, and so all our internet is down.
That reminds me of the 90s when I get a phone call, I get kicked off the internet.
I know. That's what happens when you live in the country.
Jeff, if you would please, we typically always ask brothers the strengths and weaknesses of the fraternity, but I would like to laser focus in on to the York Rite side. So if you would tell us, what do you think the strengths and weaknesses are of York Rite Masonry in Texas?
Well, we've already kind of talked about the strength. I think for the young professional Master Mason that is looking for scalability in their participation in Freemasonry, finding the right combination of chapter, council, and commandery membership, and being able to, even if you're not in an active, even if your chapter is not kind of like Dennis, you're displaced or something else, you still have that ritual book, and that's in plain English, and you can open it up, and there are some most beautiful parts. I mean, so for me, I think the strength is and kind of the hidden secret, the hidden gem or jewel is the full form opening of a Royal Arch chapter in the state of Texas, in the Grand Royal Arch chapter system of Texas. It is one of the most beautiful thing with the rehearsal of duties and talking about the veils and and just all the symbolism that's just packed into about 10 minutes of your life once a month or more. I've been blessed that I've gotten the opportunity because of my work to travel and see. Probably when I started, there were probably a little over 90 active Royal Arch chapters in the state of Texas. And I've gotten to see a multitude of those open. I've been to about 65 of those in person and actually seen the opening ceremony in different places. And sometimes whenever they're normally opening with 5, which is there's 2 different formats as we know. And I think Justin's been a part of me kind of being the high priest and me kind of getting there a few minutes early before the meeting and kind of encouraging him to let's do it in full a form as possible. And even if we have to read a little bit more than we would like to, or have one person that knows the parts do more of it, this will probably get me in trouble. But I want that put out there, especially for those couple of those companions that went to a festival and didn't see that and all those type of things. So I think that's the strength. I think the weakness is we are always about, I mean, even back in the heyday, the weakness is we have 250,000 Masons in Texas at one point in time in the last 100 years, and we had 25,000 chapter and council members. And if you go back and I've actually got a copy of the demise chapters, and a lot of them went away right between World War I and World War II. Great Depression, but actually in the 20s, there was a big surge, like 1900 to like 1918, 20, and then they just didn't have the staying power. And so 100 years ago, there was just as many demises and mergers and things going on, probably percentage wise, as we have now. So sometimes we forget lest we forget, type of thing. But I think I think maybe that we just don't have in the chapter, especially. Well, there's a lot of work. There's 9 different degrees. There's 3 different bodies. But that's kind of a weakness in itself. There's a lot going on there, but it's a strength in itself. Hey, find something that you like. I mean, you don't have to be involved. I think another weakness or a myth, I would say myth. I think this is more of a myth that I can't be a Knights Templar or an active member of my commandery because I don't want to spend the time or the money or whatever to buy that chapeau or that dress, that the uniform or if they do the capes and everything, I can't do all that. Well, here's a little secret. There's 2 degrees. There's 3 orders. So 2 of them, the commander usually provides you with the costume for the order of the Royal Red Cross and the Order of Malta. And those are parts which, guess what? Again, they're written in plain English and they're right there for you to memorize and learn. And then, go to a practice or before the conferral happens, get with somebody who can help you go through a little bit of the floor work and, when to stand up, when to draw your sword, when to walk over here, when to grab this prop or whatever. And it's a beautiful thing, I mean, it's just kind of like being in our Scottish rites. Whenever you're active in those degrees and you're pulled in the 22nd degree and maybe you've never seen it before. But you throw in a costume and make it happen. And there's that camaraderie that comes with that. I think that's another one of our strengths. I think our companionship, we're already master masons. You've already been kind of vetted. And now it's like, okay, you've kind of proven yourself as an individual. And now you get to walk into a chapter, council, and commandery, and everybody already kind of accepts you. People aren't kind of like going, who is this guy? And, who are you and where did you come from?
I get that a lot when I travel.
So yeah, and
Of course, they know who I am.
yeah. So I think in some way, in the overall picture, there's a strength in the small, close-knit chapters, council, commandery, the York Rite bodies that we have around the state and experience. And there's a weakness in that, that if I've seen it here recently in the last 5 years or so, there's been a turnover of this particular gentleman, companion, conferred all the degrees, knew all the work, and was the kind of the leader in that, but he didn't train somebody else, or he did and they didn't stick. It just happens, right? And you've got to figure out how to kind of pull yourself back together. And I'm proud of you guys in Hillsborough chapter and council of your resurgence and your renaissance that y'all are going through. And I've seen y'all. My chapter Arlington, along with Texas and TMRC, we've helped support you and your candidates. How many have y'all brought in this year so far? Or in the last, let's just say last 24 months. Y'all, how many of you? And we've done a lot of individual degrees with you guys.
Yeah, several went to McKinney. I want to think we did about 5 so far this year, maybe 6. But it's hard to say because we got a few in the pipeline too.
But I'm talking about the ones that went through back in the spring. Y'all had what, 3 or 4 there? Yeah. You had those guys, and then back in the fall. Temple. Yeah, back in, and then whenever we were coming down to Fort Worth and doing the Royal Arch, I know there was 3 to 4 of them. We usually have enough to open full form now. Yeah, we got several other people that are interested that will be petitioning. So it's growing. And I came and spoke to you guys in July, August, somewhere in there. Late July. And gave a presentation, I think, on the veils that night. Mm-hmm. And so and about 5 or 6 people that were there sat on the sideline. They were York Rite Masons now, because we just did it like an open, where anybody could sit in. I think that was we had interested members. Okay, sit in and listen. I think maybe I'm getting. I think that was another one. Yeah, I think so. Maybe. But no, but you guys you had people that were younger than me there. And I'm 50, so it was really great. It was. I really, and so you're one of the people that if somebody was like, how do we turn our battleship around, the USS Royal Arch chapter, and so I think that's part of it. I don't think that the leadership needs to be a title and look at me and look at all the things that I've achieved. There's one prominent Mason that one day I was kind of picking at him. He's internationally known Mason. And I was picking at him. He said, well, Jeff, if you've been around for as long as I have and you were a nice guy, hopefully you'd get a few honors here and there. And so it was a very sobering thing. So, but I think that overall, I think also the kind of overall in the fraternity, I think there's there's something missing. I think we have, I've heard the Scottish Rite, which I love. Love my Fort Worth Scottish Rite. Love been to San Antonio, been to Austin Scottish Rite meetings, and to Dallas, and traveled out of state, and love it. But the Scottish Rite having 29 degrees is also kind of one of those. A lot of information there. Yeah. Morals and dogmas, bridge to life, this, that, and the other, and it's really great. I mean, we have a national organization that has a really strong research with one of our own Texas past masters, Arturo de Hoyos, leading a lot of that, along with Brent Morris, Bob Davis, and Jim Treasure back in the day, and so on and so forth. But it's a little bit different, right? It's a little bit more scholarly. It's a little bit more academic. It's more research, and it's kind of finely tuned. And so what I found, and what you asked me to come do, Justin, at your own chapter, is to really kind of bring more of a interpretation. Yeah. Like, let's really, just what, the whole thing behind me, the backdrop here of of the Ark of the Covenant with the mercy seat and the cherubim, and let's break all that down. And what does that mean to us? You know, from our own backgrounds. Really, it's really not even really teaching you Freemasonry. It's kind of taking the symbol and just enhancing or improving upon what you already knew about that. Because each one of us. So one time I was thinking about symbolism, and I was very blessed to be in that lodge in Arlington, and we had people from different backgrounds. I grew up in East Texas. There's not a lot of different people from different backgrounds. I mean, you know, people are named Smith, Jones, and Williams, and they're pretty much Baptist, Methodist, or Church of Christ. And so whenever I got outside of my hometown and where I grew up, went to Arlington Lodge, one of my best friends, even to this day, talk to him all the time, is a Jewish member of the lodge. Mm-hmm. And he and I started comparing kind of notes because I was so interested. I never really had a chance to sit and just talk to someone who is in Judaism. Mm-hmm. And so that sparked something in me. And so I figured out one day, he and I were talking, and we were talking about this one symbol. I can't remember what it was, maybe a working tool or something like that. Or I was interpreting something, and I was coming from a very Christian, you know, Southern Baptist, Vacation Bible School, Bible study background, which is always what I'm going to be coming from. I mean, I can't get away from that, even if I study other disciplines and other world religions and things. I still can't get away from that. And he had a totally different take on it. He had more of the traditional kind of Torah take on it, you know, and rabbinic kind of take on it. And it was so liberating for me.
Yeah.
I think that's whenever it really started for me of, wait a minute. What I always encourage you to do is this: if you're going to talk about a symbol, just take it up and put it on a blank altar. You can, if you want to leave the Holy Bible there, the volume of sacred law, whatever you want to put on, you know, whatever you want to talk about, you can leave that there. But somewhere on that altar, just put that symbol, and then think about it kind of in your own imagination, that there's four sides to that. There's four different interpretations of that are all valid. And so each one of us, the three of us, if we were sitting there and we put something on an altar or a triangle right in the middle and just turned off every light in the room, if you want to use your imagination, and just had that spotlight that comes down over the altar shining on that, then each one of us would probably come from a little bit different angle to that.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, and that's the beauty of it. And, you know, that's why I think people in Texas gravitate to the York Rite bodies so quickly, is because it does follow the path more so of the Judaism and Christianity. And so it's an easy transition to learn and understand. And you get it because you've grown up with that pretty much all your life. The Scottish Rite, it opens your eyes to a little bit of a different take on things, and helps you to realize that, you know, maybe we're not the only faith in the world, that you know, we shouldn't be so critical against other people because they're not the same faith or whatever. So I like that, but that's why, you know, I do see the value in both, and I do like the way that the York Rite follows that journey directly out of the Blue Lodge. That's one of the reasons why I did it, because, you know, I grew up Christian, and so I, you know, did the same thing. I still belong to a Baptist church. You know, now I think a little bit differently than I used to. I'm not so dogmatic, but you're absolutely right. And what it's all about is us finding our way to God through all these different symbols, and because that's where it started, with symbols. You know, it wasn't words from the beginning, it was symbols. And so we're trying to understand our path to God through symbolism and discussing with other brothers in an intelligent manner on what those symbols mean, or what they could mean, or what they may mean, or whatever. You know, that's the beauty of Freemasonry to me. I'd also, since he's coughing, I'd also like to throw in that it's exciting right now. I'm going to take this opportunity. that it's exciting right now because we are seeing the York Rite has always been affected by the strength of the Blue Lodge because it's a hometown kind of a thing. Scottish Rite is always the big temples, the big cathedrals. York Rite's always the small body within the lodges. That's where it usually is performed, and so over the years it's kind of had its struggles, but now we're seeing a new resurgence of members that are coming in, that the lodges are starting to get stronger in certain areas, and so their York Rites are starting to get stronger in those areas. Like in Seguin, they're going to have their first festival in February. They're going to have their first festival, and it's beautiful that it's happening.
Yeah, and some of that is getting, like we mentioned earlier, 27 district instructors, one to every district, having someone on top of the 6 committee on work guys to kind of help encourage the improvement towards that standard of everybody opening up full form and everybody, actually doing the program, actually investing the time and the resources into the program, and not just kind of showing up to make the meeting happen, pay the water bill, drink a cup of coffee or 3, and then skedaddle as soon as somebody says, all right, we're adjourned. So I think with that, the other thing that helped us was because we're locally controlled, not nationally, internationally controlled. There was a nice little thing that happened because the Grand Lodge of Texas, the Grand Royal Arch Chapter of Texas, and the Grand Council, the Royal and Select Masters of Texas, were the only things for about 6 months that you could join or be active in or go to or whatever. And when we were kind of in lockdown for COVID and everything, people were sitting like this and watching YouTube, and they were watching everybody was inviting them to these presentations through Facebook on Zoom. And so they got a lot more information individually, kind of very laser focused. And there was those resources there because they just frankly had a lot more time on their hands. And so a lot of that gravitated towards that. And I think that's, we got close in the Grand Chapter and Grand Council of having a kind of net zero, not really a growth, but a net zero loss. I mean, it was like an actually sit still. It was a few, it was like less than a percentage point, or I think, or at least less than 2 or 3 points of a loss instead of it being like double digits.
Nice.
So because we've added back these 20-year-olds and these 30-year-olds and these 40-year-olds and these 50-year-old men, and we hope that they're going to be members for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years of their lives, because we love the York Rite. We love the Chapter Council Commandery.
So some thoughts that I have based off just this conversation is it made me think back to when I first joined York Rite. I went to it was a 1-day for the festival, so I got everything,
even the
commandery. Yes,
that's a long
everything.
Day.
And I was
not 3 degrees on Friday night and the other 6 over 8 hours or 9 hours.
I was working night shift, so I went through all those degrees, and then went right back to work. But I was really looking forward to going to Chapter Council. Like I looked forward to it for quite a while, and then I get there, and everybody's just reading out of a book. No one knows any of the signs or anything like that. There's no business to really cover. I mean, they're just opening and closing for the sake of keeping their charter, just for the sake of having it, really. And that made a pretty negative impact on me right away, as far as my first impression outside of the degrees and everything. And so that goes back to what you're saying. We have to do better. We have to know our work, because I understand, like we've all used the book here and there, right? But we have to get away from that as best we can, because it's not impressive. It's the opposite effect. And at Hillsborough, what we do before we actually start opening is we'll go over the signs before we actually open. That way we're not caught off guard. We're not trying to figure it out in the opening. Like we've already kind of gone through it. But
And my thing is I encourage chapters and councils to do that.
Mhm.
And what I say is everything goes back to sports, right? Usually if you're a guy, you always bring it back to something, right? Or it could be hunting too. It could be hunting or whatever. You're not going to go out, and try to take down your trophy buck or whatever you're hunting for, whether it be bow or rifle or pistol or whatever, without knowing how to use that weapon.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go play around at golf, or most people don't that want to be highly successful and be warmed up. Mm-hmm. You're not going to go without hitting some balls and making some putts and maybe chipping, getting a warm up in. Yeah. And so that's why do we think that we can do that? Just roll out of the car straight from work in our business casual, or maybe Justin Schultz and rolling out of his John Deere or whatever. He's probably gonna get mad at me because I don't know the right.
Oh, he doesn't listen. It's fine.
but him crawling down from his tractor, working daylight till dark, and then coming in his overalls or whatever straight to the chapter meeting and not going over that. Same thing. Right? You wouldn't operate an expensive. You wouldn't operate something you cared about without going through and doing the right proper maintenance and kind of the right setup and warming it up and things like that. And I think we know all these.
And that's what it boils down to. That's what it all boils down to, is if you care about it. That's also why I haven't moved my membership down here yet, because I want to have the time to invest in it. And next year I will. I'll have a lot more time. So that's when I'm planning on jumping into the York Rite down here. But you've got to care about it to be successful at it.
Absolutely.
But maybe nobody's ever explained it to you properly either. Nobody's ever kind of encouraged you, really. Maybe they just asked you to join, but they didn't really. It's past mentorship. It's kind of just one of the cool things that we did here recently when we had 3 of them in person, and then we did 3 of them online. Our grand chapter under David Baskin, who's our grand high priest, had these things called rallies, and I was a part of putting those together and had a segment. But it's not about me. It's more about Chris Livingston out of George Washington chapter up in Richardson, North Dallas. He had let me tell you the 5 reasons that you should be a Royal Arch Mason, because we allowed Master Masons to come to those events, and so one of them was, and I'll probably get the number wrong, but it was either 29 or 39 different organizations that once you're a Royal Arch companion, you're legal to either go ask to join, or you can go ask to join, like the council and the commandery being the immediate 2. There's a few others, but even including
AMD and
those are invitational, but that you would have access to if you're a Royal Arch Mason. Knight Masons, Allied Masonic degrees. We don't need to say the acronyms, Dennis, because that's part of our problem in the York Rite. We were just always
that's true. That's true.
These big sweeping terms, and nobody. Knight Masons, which we all know where the greatest Knight Mason council is located at. We'll just get this out of the way while we're talking about Knight Masons. Since I brought it up, Justin and I know that it's in Hillsborough, Texas, twice a year. Frank G. McDonald, number 97, is the best one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They said no substitute.
But with all the chair degrees and all the things that, if you're not a Royal Arch companion in good standing, you can't be in the Red Cross of Constantine, which is an invitation.
Right. You
can't be in. I'm trying to think of. Well, you can't be in the York Rite College.
Yeah.
You can't be a member. You can't be a Knight York Cross of Honor. And all these things. And so if anybody's interested that's listening to this, YorkRite.org would have all these invitational and dependent bodies on top of and there's, and also with my travels, always focusing on, especially since about 2018 or so, going through chapters. I've been in multiple chapters in different states, and sometimes I haven't seen a lot of degree work, but I've had a lot of conversations with other companions in those grand jurisdictions, and the diversity of what we have as far as the Royal Arch system goes in the US, Canada, and in the UK is crazy. Yeah. I mean, I'll start talking about a degree, and I'll get into a specific little section of a degree, and we'll be talking about like, oh no, we don't even do it like that. I'm like, what? How? It's not the same. And so for me, there's a insatiable desire, a zeal and a fervency is in me about the chapter, because there's so many different influences that go into it. Yeah. With Smith, Preston Webb, all those guys that I guess was in the 1700s that took their version of the Blue Lodge ritual and kind of went from coast to coast and kind of populated that within so many of the grand jurisdictions. It's not that way. I mean, I can even look at our master's degree without going into it, and some of the research that I've done and some of the conversations I've had with companions over in England, and I can see traces of the Irish system as well as the Scottish system with a little bit of sprinkle of the English of what they do. And so it's just different. And I guess that's what, going back to that reality compared to expectations. I really was taken whenever I did a festival, like I said, back in 2000, and I'd never seen anything in any degree. By that time, I had taken about 5 different fraternal order degrees, and watched the Martin Masters degree in Texas, and it was nothing like anything I'd ever seen in my life. I see. It was wholly other, and I was like, ooh, I like this. This is my home from now on. To close out my point about Masonic education, not ritualistic degree practice, not learning the right thing to say in the right part of the carpet or and those type of things, pronunciations and stuff. I'm talking about like truly studying
the real esoteric,
and maybe exoteric, esoteric, the different levels, and really like kind of it may sound a little weird to some people, but really that kind of let your mind go and flow and go with the vibe. I mean, I always say that I'm probably one of the most conservative bohemian hippies that I've met today. and in that, I mean that I really kind of draw off of that spirit of things, that really allowing myself to kind of open up my mind and try to get rid of all this distraction and all this clutter, and kind of like you would if you were going into the Holy of Holies and just kind of focusing on that one thing. And so I think that's what we're missing. I think not everybody can do that. Not everybody wants to do that. I get it, but there's a lot more of kind of the 50 and under crowd, the 60 and under crowd.
They're starting to,
they grew up in a certain way of the education system, and then there's those of us that grew up in the Baptist church, and we were encouraged to do that a lot. If you attended Bible study and you went through Sunday school and you went to vacation Bible school, there's symbols in that like left and right, because what I figured out is I love symbolism because I didn't come from that. Probably if I'd been in a Greek Orthodox or Roman Catholicism or something where there's so much imagery and everything, where the Baptist church is kind of the opposite, and we have to use the imagery out of the Bible and the stories out of the Bible, Noah's Ark, and we didn't talk a lot about King Solomon's temple, but all the different symbols that are there in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I think that's what I would love to see more of, like just kind of I would like to say junior high school level of focus, and not make it so complicated and just kind of straightforward. Just people say, so what should I go read? You're telling me, you're encouraging me, I'm inspired, Jeff. I go, just go back and read your ritual. Just go back and read it like a book.
Mhm.
and then take the Bible and then have your favorite version of the Bible right next to it, and then have another interpretation and another one, and then maybe go find some Judaism references. I know it sounds bad, maybe some people, but don't go back in and everything's already been written in the last couple of 100 years about the Royal Arch chapter. You can read some of that stuff, but go find it for yourself.
Mhm.
Don't rely on others to hand it to you, even if it's something, a study guide or something. I've been blessed to be kind of commissioned to write different short talks and do things, and I still, want people to think on their own.
Yeah.
And really feel it, and really go after
Yes.
truly. I mean, I've been in this situation with both of you. One I was leading because Justin asked me to. The other one, Dennis and I, like within the last couple months, was down in San Antonio, the CME, the Continuing Masonic Education, with all those great guys there, and I really felt at home both places.
Yeah.
And there was a real true sense of people wanting to know more and wanting to kind of open themselves up to, why am I here and what's being taught me?
Right.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I'd like to just go into just final thoughts. So if there's any thoughts based on what we talked about, or just anything else that you maybe wanted to just convey before we wrap things up. Jeff, is there anything on your mind?
Always something on my mind. I just want to encourage people wherever they're at to enjoy their Freemasonry. I think so many times we get into, whether it be through Facebook or face-to-face interactions or whatever, and a lot of times what I hold dear and we kind of talked about it earlier, what I prioritize is maybe not what you prioritize. And let's find our common ground, and let's find those things. And I think that's the weakness that we have right now in Masonry. Is like, we walk around and we go, this is the way I do it, and it's the only way it can be done. And there's a lot of maturity and kind of minimizing your own ego to say, wow, I don't really understand why you do that. Maybe I'm not personally down with that, but and I think as you travel, that would be my other thing, is as you travel and you have the opportunity. I have 18
it expands states.
Yeah, I have, and so they do other things in other states, that the Grand Lodge of Texas, the Grand Royal, all of our grand jurisdictions here, and the different groups that the three of us are members of, we wouldn't feel comfortable with what they do. Do I walk in there and say that they're doing it wrong? No. Have I been in like situations where I've seen the degrees that you and I call the same things, and they don't even call it like fellowcraft. They call it the second degree. It's such a but I love it. I love seeing those differences and those nuances. And I'm trying not to say everything that's rolling through my head, all the examples of what I've seen in person, but I've been blessed to do that. But I think, if you're not able to do something like that in what I call Masonic road tripping, is maybe find an outlet for that, and it'll help you expand what you do in your own circle, your local circle, and it'll help you just become a better Mason. I think that's so. Going back to the Scottish Rite, York Rite debate, the other thing would be, people are always like, well, which one should I join? Which one should you join first? And so I've already kind of referenced him. He's a good buddy of mine, Bob Davis, or at least he's a good buddy of mine. I don't know if I'm a good buddy of his or not, a friend of his. But I've heard him on a podcast probably right as we we're going into the pandemic, or right as we were in it, 2019-20, about 3 years ago. And he talked about the concept that he's come up with, I think, in the last few years, maybe been longer. I've just been listening to him for the last 3 years or so, of being a complete Mason. And so, just like the triangle that you see in the chapter, the council, and in the commandery, you've got three things there that need to be in balance to really understand the full story And to have enough information and enough symbolism that kind of layers itself and weaves itself together, you don't just have one color thread to make a tapestry or two. You can, but it doesn't have the beauty, I mean,
right. It doesn't have the depth.
Yeah. So think about it. I mean, when you're talking maybe to a Master Mason about these other two rites, God gave us, more than just one color. Gave us a whole rainbow of them, right? Mm-hmm. Gives a whole array of them. And so, and I think we've been blessed as Freemasons in the modern times that we have access to all these degrees, and we can learn something. And the way you learn more about the degree that you just took or you took 20 years ago is you go and watch another degree, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, wait a minute, I see that now. Mm-hmm. I learn more about the EA and the fellowcraft when I'm doing chapter and council work than I do if I'd have gone and just studied the EA and the fellowcraft.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, for sure.
All right, I think that kind of covers my comments there.
I love it. I guess we'll let Dennis say something.
No, you can go ahead.
No.
You might not get a chance.
No. Go ahead. It's fine.
Okay. So I'd like to piggyback on that same thought, because I agree. I wholeheartedly agree that my goal in life is to see as many degrees as possible within my lifetime. I want to see it played out as much as I can so that I can build this picture in my mind and in my spirit of what Freemasonry is and what our journey is, because that's what it's all for, is to create this spirit to where we are ready to meet our maker. So I want to see as many degrees as possible so that I have every bit of fruit that this world has to offer for me to enjoy in my short time that I have on this earth. That's we're all doomed to time, right? We're all gonna die. It's a simple fact. That's what Freemasonry tells us, is we only have so much time in life. It's our biggest asset. So in that time, I want to make the best use of it possible by doing as many degrees, learning as many degrees, and then digging into those degrees as possible to truly understand what the ancients were trying to tell us, what even the brothers of today are trying to say. Because everybody has valid input based on their experiences, and through those experiences, it might just strike a chord in me to think a new way. Because the last thing I want to do is be stuck in my own way and get it wrong. That's the tragedy of being closed-minded, is being stuck in my own way, not learning something more, and then at the end of the day figuring out, oh, all this time I had it wrong. And so I wholeheartedly agree that we need to travel. We need to expand ourselves and be open to the lessons of the day and take them for what it is, and not what somebody tells us it should be. Because while it's good to learn from people, we can't draw our own conclusions based on somebody else's opinion, because their truth is different from ours. I grew up in a different way than you did and what Justin did. And so we could all see the same catechism and see something completely different in that catechism. So for me to let somebody else tell me what it means and think that that's the only way it is, I'm just doing a disservice to me. And then it's a disservice for me to tell somebody else this is the only way it is. I believe that we should all embrace the differences that we have, because that's what Freemasonry is all about, is our commonality is our differences. So we're able to come together and have these discussions that nobody else can have. There's too many people on the right and left that are on these far sides, and they're afraid to come together, and they'll never find a solution because they're too busy focused on their own side. But if we look at our commonalities instead of looking at our differences, then we can come to a better conclusion for us all. I also believe that, like you were stating earlier, the young guys of today, they grew up in an information age, and now we're in a generation now that has started from birth to coming of age to be a Mason, that has had a cell phone in their hand the whole time. They've had all this technology available to them, all this information available to them. But what they haven't had necessarily is the spiritual life that we had back in the day when we had more conversations. Kids of today are searching for that connectivity with each other, with people, with humans, and they're wanting to explore the different faiths of the world that they may not have had in their home. So many people are busy doing 100 different things these days, and we just don't go to church like we used to. And well, a lot of Masons do, but you know what I'm saying, the general public, they're just not going to church like they used to. And so these young guys are coming in wanting to learn this information. They're sponges, and they're wanting to learn. So if we don't offer that to them, if we don't give them that experience that they're looking for and be willing to have those conversations, we'll lose them. And I think that right now we're in a day that more people like yourself, Jeff, and Justin, and so many more are feeling the same way and saying, let's be that mentor, let's be that friend, let's be that brother that harnesses that energy and helps that brother along and supports that brother. Let's be their cheerleader. Let's encourage them to do all that they can do in Freemasonry, whereas in the past it wasn't all that way. So I think we're in a unique time to where we're fixing to see some great changes in Freemasonry, and not changes to the detriment, but changes in focusing on the history, focusing on the catechism, and so forth, to where we can come to a better realization of where we are today.
Yeah.
And I think that York Rite just absolutely is a must do for anybody. I did it first thing out of Blue Lodge. That was the very first thing I did, and I loved it. There is no better degree that I've ever had, or no better set of degrees that I've ever had than seeing our grand chaplain go through and spit out all the different knowledge that he knows. God bless him.
David Rogers can monologue for an absurdly long amount of time.
Oh, yeah.
The things he has in his memory banks is ridiculous.
Yes.
But at the same time, he's taking the last 40 years of his life to enact that like 8 times a week. So, I mean, and he loves it. I mean, and that's part of my recent kind of explosion of love in the chapter. Mm-hmm. That's just a reflection off of David.
No.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And
easy to say yes, he's a great guy.
Most worshipful Rogers is a Texas Masonic treasure.
Right worshipful Rogers.
Right worshipful. Oh my God. Right worshipful.
Yes, Right worshipful
is a Texas Masonic treasure.
He is a treasure and a beloved friend. I love him to death, and he knows it. He's one of the few people in this world that, no matter where I am, it's a bear hug. I love him, and he loves my family, and that's great. So he was present at my degrees, and it made that kind of an impact on me. I want to be that kind of an impact for somebody else, so that they remember 20, 30 years later that he was in my degree and he loved it. You could tell he loved it. It meant something to him when he portrayed that character. I want to be that same kind of mentor and person to look to as the David Rogers out there. the final thought is that it's great that we're seeing the resurgence of so many of these chapter councils and commanderies starting to take the work more seriously and pushing forward for and taking it into their own hands instead of waiting for a festival to come around.
Mhm.
They're deciding, hey, why aren't we putting together a festival? Why aren't we the ones doing it?
Well,
And so we're having it done. So
within 1 month, kind of in reverse, we had the Order of the Temple conferred outdoors in West Texas.
I
Yes,
saw
I
pictures.
can't
That
wait
looked
till next
amazing.
And then at the end of this month, if you are a Master Mason and you do want to petition a chapter and a council, you can come to almost Louisiana, kind of over between Carthage and Henderson Tatum, way over in East Texas,
Yep.
where I grew up, and go to a scout ranch and see all 4 chapter degrees and the 2 council degrees at each individual campsite.
Oh, very cool.
Appropriate. David Rogers leads that along with Claude Hammond. And
But are they going to have Ricky Cox on a horse? Because that's what made those.
well,
Probably
you don't
will.
need a horse. You don't need a horse unless you're doing the Royal Arch degree. But there are.
Yeah,
but we
that's
stage
true.
each degree to where it makes sense during the time of the day, as well as the topic. The topographic area of that scout
right.
camp, which is on a lake.
Mhm.
And there's usually, without going into too much detail, we do things at the chapel that would make sense to do at the chapel.
Let's see.
Yes.
We do things that would be especially you can, if you're not in a lodge room, you can walk around a lot more. So the Royal Arch Sojourn is a little bit differently done. It's not all
Well,
like packed right there on top of each other.
Right, and that's the beauty of the day.
Yeah.
Today we're in an age to where we're starting to do those kinds of things. We're trying to make those experiences more meaningful for ourselves as well as everybody else.
Mhm.
And whereas that wasn't being done 10, 15 years ago. I can tell you for sure it was not being done 10, 15 years ago.
Claude Hammond says it's been 50 years about 50 years, 5 decades since we've done an outdoor festival for the York Rite, for the chapter council degrees. Because Marshall chapter council are the sponsoring group. They use their charter and they get a dispensation to move it to the scout ranch. And so, yeah, I mean, same thing that we were talking about earlier, Dennis, taking the traditions that we've had always and how do we adapt them to today.
Mhm.
And I think I see so much more of that going on. And because people are supporting each other, people can talk to each other on Facebook.
Yes.
We can message each other. We can get on Zoom meetings, and we're right there together. And on a regular basis, here's Claude over here in Longview and Marshall. Here's another guy in Laredo, another guy in McAllen, another guy in Wichita Falls. You probably know who I'm talking about. All these guys, Austin, San Antonio, and we can all be sitting on the same level.
People are looking on social media now, right? And it's one thing to go through some commandery degrees and post like a picture at the end, right? Like, here's everybody that went through the degrees. It was a great time. But it's a whole other level when you're doing it outdoors and you got there's some really good pictures from like that one in West Texas you're talking about. I mentioned Ricky Cox on horse. I mean, very picturesque. But there was also like the brothers around I guess they were around the altar or something. It was like looking up and just the scenery and everything. That, if from the outside looking in as a non-Mason, I mean, seeing a bunch of guys just standing in a room is one thing, but seeing something like that's completely different level. So
and
taking it to this new environment and exploring what we can do within the parameters of our degrees, that's a big deal.
We last year at the outdoor festival, and it came out of necessity. The only thing that they had so many candidates over in that part of the state that wanted to take the York, to take the chapter and council degrees, because that's the only thing you could do at that point in time. In 2020 was the first one. Yet last year was the second annual, and so this year's the third annual. And so all the permissions were done and everything. And last year we had in the 2021 version of it, we had guys from Louisiana, Mississippi, and I think Arkansas attend. And then there were maybe upwards of 2 or 3 companions from El Paso Chapter and Council. They had flown in across the state and then drove. They did about an 11-hour Masonic road trip.
Yeah, it's a long haul, I can tell you.
But they
done it recently.
Yeah,
it was more about the opportunity to take their degrees outdoors in this very specialized event that's not cheapened. I mean, you've got some of the greatest ritualists in the state of Texas at that event. So and that kind of stuff is just not going to stop as we move forward. And so it's not really changing anything. Going back to I think there was how could we? I think it's you said correct it here in one of your questions, but I think it's innovate. How can we take what we already do well and just kind of modernizing it, and not even the right word. I mean, I'm not an advocate. Let's confer everything on Zoom, and everybody stay at home and watch it. That there's been some other great jurisdictions.
If you have a cool location nearby that would be suitable, looking to get dispensation and doing a degree there or something. It adds variety.
Yeah. So I know in Ohio, Central Ohio, I think it is, they confer the Mark Master's degree in a cave. They rent out a cave, a cavern. I don't know if it's private or it's public. We could do the same thing in Marble Falls at Longhorn. If we could rent that out, and there's actually a council room there that where both Native Americans as well as outlaws used to hold court. And it's really cool if you've ever been to that.
I've been there. I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah. Whenever I saw that, I was with my scout troop, and I was to be the perfect place for a Masonic degree.
I mean,
there's all kinds of venues that we could take things and kind of take it on the road and heighten the experience.
I mean, if you got a hilltop locally, and if you have access to it, do it on a hilltop. Yeah, that's good,
right? Well, it goes back to back in the day when you would see the preacher take everybody down to the river to actually do the baptisms, or if you live by the ocean, you'd go to and have a oceanside service, and everybody would do the baptisms there in the ocean. It just adds that just little bit extra, just that little bit extra that makes your hair stand up on end when it comes time for those special words to be said.
So I'm going to ask the every time educator in our group a question. I think I know the answer that I have, but I'll see what his answer is. How many types of learning are there, Justin? 3, 4? What's the major categories?
Put me on spot. You got visual,
cognitive,
audio, tactile, like hands-on, experiential, yeah.
So in degree work, when you're the candidate and you're the audience at the same time, you know what I'm about to ask? Which one of those 4 that you just named off has the most impact? Which one is the most substantial? I mean, I know my answer, and I know the way that when I've done those kind of testing type things, which way I learned the best. But
well, I mean, me personally, I don't know, man. Like the experience, a lot of people are tactile. Like actually going through experience makes a big difference. But I was in a conversation with someone not long ago, and they made a point. I had never really thought about this. Your job isn't really to learn when you go into the degree; it's to experience.
Right.
Me personally, the best way I learned everything was after my degree. I tied in my experience with what I was seeing visually at that point. Like going and seeing other degrees, like another EA, is like, oh, that's where I was when that happened. That's what I'm saying at that point. And so I think it all ties together.
I think teaching you get the best when you're doing the degree.
Yeah.
When you're doing the degree, you know what's being said, you know what's going to be said after. you're in the middle of that degree, and that's when you get the best experience, in my opinion. I love it. I think it's great. Though there is something to be said. The more senses you can get involved, the more you're going to learn and take away from it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times whenever I'm wanting to write new stuff or whatever, it's a great opportunity for me to go to a degree chapter council, and I'm needing to put some stuff down on paper. Just go sit on the sideline and just hold the book open and just kind of just like I talked about earlier, just let my mind go. And I'm lucky enough to be in places where I'm not needed to jump in and do a part. Or if I am, I'm doing a real minor part.
Yeah.
So, so I can sit there and really, and sometimes whenever you get a chance to do like a junior deacon or something, and you're sitting on one of the ends and you can kind of see the room in a different than from the sidelines. You can, you're on the east or the west side of the scenes and everything, and getting to watch from sitting in the west in Arlington, a pendant by our West Lodge room, and getting to watch the Royal Arch unfold in front of me like a movie.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting in the audience at a theater in a movie and getting to watch it with kind of nobody else right there is really a unique experience.
I enjoy that as well. Yeah.
Well, Dennis,
I enjoy that as well.
Did you have any other final thoughts?
Just that because we are going to be having these degrees coming up, we've got a lot of them happening in the chapter council and commandery. If you need to get in touch with us to find out where those are, feel free to do it. All three of us know what's happening around the state. We're happy to help you in any way we can. There's one that's going to be happening, like I said, in Seguin at Guadalupe Lodge, the chapter council and commandery, and we'll actually give you a link to that one. There's a web page you can go to sign up for that and get a petition and go to that. But that's all I wanted to say is that if you're looking for that Freemasonry, we're some of the guys that can help you find it. Yep. So feel free to ask us. We're here for you. That's what we're here for.
Nice.
And there's not a Grand Lodge. If you're in a Grand Lodge jurisdiction in the U.S., that includes D.C. and Puerto Rico,
Alaska.
I mean, every state and every U.S. territory. There's a Royal Arch chapter that goes along with that. There's a couple of nuances where there's not a council, and there are grand commanderies everywhere. And so, if you're listening to this and you want to track us down, some of us sitting on this recording might actually know some people in those states. Or
we can help get there.
And so it's not just the state of Texas that we can help. We can. It's really cool how connected, even at the national level, that the York Rite is.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Well, I would just like to say that I'll be echoing what you have both said. York Rite Freemasonry is really experiencing kind of a renaissance right now. It is definitely trending more popular. And with that being said, I'll go back to what I said about my first experience, and that we, as chapters and councils and commanderies, have to be ready when we have new people to actually deliver, just like in Blue Lodge. We have to actually be able to deliver on what we're promising. Don't assume just because they're already a Masons, they're just going to go along for the ride if you're doing everything halfway. Jeff said something that was really, well, among many things, but something that really stuck out to me earlier is that I've always personally been of the belief that one of the weaknesses of York Rite is that we have too many degrees, and that we're expecting either local lodges to memorize everything and confirm or wait on a festival. But as he pointed out, Scottish Rite has way more, and they do just fine, and they thrive. And so it's not a matter of how many degrees we have. In my opinion, it's a matter of our approach. And I think something that Jeff mentioned, as far as like a more scholarly approach, is probably worth reevaluating. I mean, it works very well for Scottish Rite, and we cover different ground than Scottish Rite in most of our degrees. There's no reason why we can't start taking a more analytical approach and having our own ongoing Masonic education from a York Rite perspective, and really branch that out and explore that, which it has been, but I would argue that maybe it hasn't been explored and revisited quite as much as probably like Scottish Rite or maybe some other Masonic organizations.
It's a lot more fun when you learn more about that degree when you do it, because then it's a different experience. So you're right on the money. I mean, that really plays a big part into it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say scholarly academic is not really what I'm advocating, not to disagree with you. Mine would be more artistic. Mine would be more,
well, right.
More impressionistic and more abstract. I really want us to get out of this or have a place for it. I mean, everybody can do their masonry like they want to, but have this place to where you really just focus on the essence. I mean, this weekend I get we're going to have the barbecue cook-off as part of Texas Masonic Family Day, and I'm also going to cook some chili for a cook-off for a social group that I'm a member of. Nice. Later on Saturday.
So I'll probably see you Saturday then.
I'll see you.
I'm hoping to make it there.
You might see me Friday night if you're there in the Pecan Grove. But okay. But the essence of making good chili is to get every one of those flavors integrated and with that meat. And you really can't do that if you're taking somebody else's thing that they wrote, kind of in putting that all together, citing the right footnotes, and then and you're not really just looking at, this is the symbol, what do I feel, what do I think, what does that say to me? I mean, this kind of,
right,
it may sound really weird to some people, but this almost like meditative state, or if you've ever like listened to like Pink Floyd or other kind of bands like that just really have this like vision, and that's what you're wanting to kind of create within your own mind, heart, body.
Well, that's the symbol of the eye. You're trying to get your mind's eye to see what that symbol is trying to portray.
Yeah.
So yes, you definitely need to focus in and meditate a little bit and get to that real spiritual connection.
Where's Chuck Dunning? We need him in here with this.
Well, I think my newest symbol that I've been really meditating or contemplating on is the pot of incense, which is connected both within the master's degree symbolism, but it's really forefront in the Royal Arch degree and within the chapter, and really where that place is at. And so incense, when you burn it, just kind of consumes, and that's the same thing I'm talking about. Just kind of free flows everywhere, and you can smell it, you can feel it, you can see it, you can taste it.
You can almost taste it.
You're not supposed to.
Well, it kind of, when you got a beard like this, everything just kind of sticks in there. But it's one of those things where I think that's what we need to be striving for, is to have this kind of impact of this incense in the way it kind of can, the
submersive experience. Yeah.
The point within a circle.
Nice. Well, companions, this has been a very good interview, a very insightful conversation. Jeff, excuse me. Thank you so much for coming on tonight and talking with us. I know it's getting late, but every time we have a conversation, I always learn something, and I hope all the viewers got as much value out of listening to this as I did having the conversation. And Dennis, thanks for coming, man. Thanks for coming.
Somebody's got to keep you straight.
Yeah. All right, companions and brothers. Thank y'all again.
Take care.
Yes,
Keep it between the points.
I appreciate both of you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Appreciate you, Jeff.
Yep.
Thank
Peace
you
be
for
with
coming
us.
on.